Hi everybody, I'm just sharing a bit of information here. I'm going to share this video here, The Global Power Elite, a talk by Peter Phillips. I'm also going to be sharing, if you look in the links below, Last American Vagabond, Ryan's video that, among other things, discusses the coronavirus and shares the evidence from a top expert explaining that the coronavirus, COVID-19, is actually a genetic. It is weaponized. It's a weaponized version of flu. It has been laboratory manipulated as weapon. It's got the markers on it. And please watch that and the associated video that's shared there as well of this expert. We are dealing with some very, very, very nasty people, and these are the people. Okay, now before anybody starts making statements of anti-Semitism and all this lot, I am not anti-Semitic to any faith. Okay, these Zionists have usurped the faith of Judaism that in order to delete the power of God, in order to delete God's law. That's basically why they've usurped it. They're running a protection racket because simultaneously they claim to be standing up for Jews, defending Israel, defending Jews from anti-Semitism. Actually, we know for a fact that they are funding all the far-right groups that are known to attack Jews, that have attacked Jewish synagogues, that have attacked Jewish cemeteries, that have maimed and killed, traumatised, terrorised Jewish people, regular Jewish people who are not Zionists. The vast majority of Jews on planet Earth are not Zionists, and the ultra-Orthodox Jews, they do not support Zionism at all. They do not even recognise the state of Israel. So all right, I am prepared to recognise the state of Israel purely for the sake of the children that have been born there now, who identify as Israeli, whether the Christians, Muslims, Jewish people who've been born in Israel identify as Israeli citizens. Sorry, so Israel exists, but I think it has to be accepted that, I'm sorry, Israel, you have overstepped your borders. From 1967 onwards, these borders, you need to return to your borders, and the lands that are Palestine's are Palestine's. Palestine is an independent nation, and either the people who've bought properties and established their homes in there as Jewish citizens, then either you're going to stay there and become a Palestinian Jew, or you'll move into Israel, you see. And, that's the way it's going to have to be. We're going to have some sort of peace process, because we cannot allow this madness to continue, and we cannot allow Israel to complete its Greater Israel project. It has no right to have a Greater Israel project. And don't forget, this Greater Israel project, it includes parts of Iraq, parts of Syria, parts of Lebanon, even parts of Saudi Arabia. It's like, look, sorry, Israel, you asked for the nation of Israel. You asked for some land within Palestine. You were given your land. Please now accept it. What you have been doing is illegal. You have broken international law. You've broken the sovereign law of the Palestinian people. And no matter how many statements your illegal criminal parliament make now about how you're entitled to violate the sovereignty of foreign countries and allowed to ignore the directive of international law in any field you desire, I'm sorry, you can make as many statements as you like about that, but those statements are actually an admission of an intent to commit crime. And as a direct result of these statements, I am now explaining to Britain's Labour Party, who've just signed up to the Israeli Zion-Bod list of demands, the Jewish Board of Deputies that most Jews in Britain aren't even aligned with and don't even like, and actually the Jewish Board of Deputies is against them because they're not ultra right-wing fascist Jews, because they're not Zionists, okay, and they actually fund organisations like the EDL, Britain First, far-right organisations in Britain that have traditionally and are known to attack synagogues and regular Jews. So, you know, we're dealing here with an anti-Semitic force that is covertly funding other anti-Semitic forces in order to create division and destabilisation in a nation like Britain, where we know now, you know, these Zionists directly are behind Brexit. They want Brexit. The day after Johnson unlawfully prorogued Parliament, who was there the next day? Netanyahu, all the way from Israel, flew over to meet with Boris Johnson at number 10 the day after he had unlawfully prorogued Parliament, lied to Parliament, lied to the Queen, lied to the British public. We are very sure, according to the evidence, we have lawful suspicion with solid evidence to back it, that the last election in Britain, the 2019 December 12th general election in Britain was rigged. The postal vote was rigged. We're absolutely sure of it, because there is absolutely no way on this planet that a man as popular as Jeremy Corbyn and a man as unpopular as Boris Johnson, who had to hide in a fridge and couldn't show his face in public and couldn't even turn up for BBC and Sky News interviews, we know for a fact there is no way on this earth that he won by a landslide. I'm not saying there aren't people in Britain confused and daft enough to vote a set of criminals back into number 10, okay, but not by a landslide. No, not at all, not at all. And the end result of it is that we've got a decapitated Labour Party now, lost its head, everybody focusing on electing a new Labour leader. Why? Why? And the one everybody wants to elect is the one that's most closely associated with Corbyn. Well, why not just keep Corbyn then? But she has signed up to the Zio-Bod list of demands, which includes expelling people from the Labour Party who criticise Israel, who criticise Zionism, or who associate with people who criticise Zionism, whether that's through online media like Facebook or Twitter or in their personal lives. So we can all be kicked from the Labour Party. So they've taken control of our Labour Party, our Workers' Party in Britain. You're talking about a foreign entity here, the Israel lobby, who are known to have stated, we've got them on record, Al Jazeera's undercover investigation of the Israel lobby. Now, no matter what anybody wants to say about Al Jazeera, what they have exposed is not manipulated. That's the facts of the evidence, that this Israel lobby were plotting to take down British ministers, government ministers. They were plotting to take down Corbyn, and their prime objective was to get Britain out of the EU sphere, and to get Britain more into the US sphere, to get Britain to behave more like America than Europe. Well, they've achieved exactly that with Brexit, haven't they? And now we're looking at a hard Brexit, which is actually illegal. Please understand this, British people. There is absolutely no way that any government, any lawful government in this country could have given the British public a referendum on whether or not to have a hard Brexit or stay in the EU. Because it is equivalent, it's equivalent of asking the public to have a referendum on whether or not to put all people over the age of 50 into a factory prison, with the excuse that, well, we'd be freeing up jobs and saving the country a load of money. Right? It's illegal, because 50-year-old people, have they committed a crime? Should they be punished? They're innocent people. Haven't they got human rights? You can't vote whether or not to put everybody 50 plus in a factory prison. Of course, nobody's going to agree to that. But that is what the Brexit vote is equivalent to. And you understand that when you understand why the EU cannot commit to a deal with Boris Johnson or any Tory government. Why? Why can't they do it? Because legally, the EU has a duty of care to the British people as EU citizens as well, to uphold our rights, our health and safety standards, and our environmental protection laws. Okay? The EU fundamentally is established on human rights and all the rights and safety regulations that have been established since Britain entered the EU, and in fact Britain already had all of those rights in place, the vast majority of them, before we entered the EU. So being part of the EU has nothing to do with our human rights, our workers' rights, our environmental protection laws, our health and safety regulations. Were all, the vast majority of them, in place before we entered the EU, and the ones that are now embodied within the EU and have been updated over the years were all also implemented with Britain's direct influence as well. So there are rights. Now, the EU cannot agree to any trade deal with a British government that says, no, we're not going to commit to human rights. No, we're not going to commit to workers' rights. No, we're not going to commit to environmental protection laws. No, we're not going to commit to health and safety regulations on food and medicines. The EU legally cannot commit to a deal with such a nation. You see? Because then all the other nations that are in the EU would say, well, why are we committed to these then? We don't have to commit to these. And that'd be it. There'd be no protection. There'd be no human rights. So in order to keep it together, the EU cannot do a deal. And that's why Johnson's having a problem doing a deal with the EU. You see? We could, yes, agreed that, all right, we're going to stop freedom of movement for British citizens through the EU, and therefore we're going to stop immigration, which is what the people who voted Brexit, apparently the majority of them that voted Brexit, that was the major concern, was immigration. Right, okay, so this country can stop immigration and stop our freedom of movement in the EU, therefore, swap for swap, but we can still have all our rights. But you see, when you're dealing with a government that wants to scrap human rights because they want to turn Britain into a tax haven, and tax havens don't do human rights and they don't do democracy, well, they can't sign up to it. So that's what we're dealing with. And we've got a Labour Party that is still focusing all of its attention now on alleged, not actually non-existent, virtually, anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, which is virtually non-existent. Right? We're talking about something like 0.05%, which you're going to find in any part of the population of people who hate Jews, okay? Or people who hate women, women who hate men. You know, you're going to find these people anywhere, anywhere you go. But the Labour Party is focusing on that. They're not telling people the severe damages that we are going to suffer. Now, I'm going to leave this again underneath the links here, as part of the links here under this video. Please read it, people, because it's everything the Labour Party isn't telling you. It's everything the BBC isn't telling you. It's everything that this government, that the entire establishment isn't telling you. But I tell you now, British people, that if we get Boris Johnson's hard Brexit, this country is literally FUCK'd, right? 80% of the population are going to suffer. There will be a banking and building society bailing very soon after their hard Brexit, because how are they going to pay the £1 billion a week interest on the £1+ trillion debt that we are now currently paying, okay? How are we going to pay it with a totally crashed economy and a pound devalued to 25p? Because we're talking about the pound being the same value, falling to the same value as the pre-decimal crown, which was 5 shillings, 25p. Right? Do you think, British people, your wages are going to quadruple as a result? No, they are not. Is the price of food and everything you use, everything you buy now in the shops, everything that you get through your EU trade deals, not just food, we're talking about your produce from China, India, wherever you're buying, whatever you are buying and using in this country right now, you are buying through the EU trade deals, the 168 plus trade deals we have through the EU, they are all gone. Okay? Now, expect everything to rise to quadruple in price, because you're not just talking about a very much smaller market, so you can't buy in bulk like the EU does, benefits from huge discounts because it's a bulk market. It's a huge market. We're a little tiny country, okay? So food, everything's going to double in price, and then you've got your world trade tariffs on top of it, and then you've also got the profits that the middle people, the importers, all make through it as well. We are talking about a quadrupling of food, medicines, everything that you use. Are you ready for it? Are you ready for the banking and building society bailing that will be taking cash from your savings, from your pensions, your trust funds, even building societies? What's a building society bailing? Oh, we now own, what, 20% of your house, 50% of your house? Oh, interest rates have gone up. Your house is worth less now than your mortgage. Seriously. People, please wake up, because all the middle classes, you ain't been fleeced yet. But you are going to get fleeced after Boris Johnson's illegal hard Brexit. And the reason why it's illegal, because it is exactly the same as asking the country to have a referendum on whether or not to put all people aged 50 plus in a factory prison. That is what it is equivalent to, because a hard Brexit is what nations get on being kicked out of the EU. Understand that. A criminal nation that gets booted out of the EU gets a hard Brexit. They get the 50 years austerity. They get their scrambling about, begging for food, begging for deals, trade deals with other nations, and being screwed to boot. Right? Now, nobody votes for that. Nobody. And as I say, I've never been that enamoured of the EU. I understand why certain people voted for Brexit, but it's like, look, people, understand this. You didn't vote to scrap your human rights. You didn't vote to scrap your workers' rights. You didn't vote to become a corporate gimp. You didn't vote for your children's future to be a factory prison, because that is what we are looking at. These Tories said they wanted Britain, the British workforce, to be competitive with that of Asia. And we certainly will be that when the pound has been devalued to the tune of 25p. A crown currency, right? For a crown-controlled economy. And that's what Brexit is all about. And here, the legalities, okay? The Crown's offshore tax havens, that's what Brexit is protecting. The Crown's offshore tax havens, London City, that square mile, that state within the state of Britain, independent, separate state within Britain, London City, that square mile. Their financiers, they are terrified of the EU tax regulations. That is why we are having Brexit, because the Tories wanted it. Okay, they want it because they need it, because otherwise they're not only going to lose cash by paying their taxes, they are going to also, a lot of them, be facing jail because of the hundreds of thousands of fraudulent money laundering front businesses that have been set up and registered in Britain, and all the money being funneled directly through Britain into the Crown's offshore territory tax havens. Okay? And at the start of this piece, there's a list of them. And most British people aren't even aware of exactly how many offshore tax havens the Crown actually owns. I mean, you're talking about the vast bulk majority of tax havens on this planet are Crown offshore territories. And they're not British territories. They don't earn anything for the nation of Britain. They are a corporate, they belong to the corporate Crown. And as I've explained here, the Crown's offshore tax haven territories are completely separate from mainland UK. The Crown's territories do not include EU and UK rights and laws, and they are none of them democracies. Therefore, the Crown's offshore interests are lawfully recognised as foreign interests, supporting foreign powers. And those interests do include nations such as Israel and USA, as well as Kremlin-connected Russian and USA oligarchs. Boris Johnson and his government, who now commandeer Parliament, are evidence to be acting solely in favour of the Crown and its offshore interests. Legally, Mr Johnson PM is an agent of those foreign powers, and the Crown has abused its place of trust and perception as a benign influence within the UK. The Crown now controls UK government, and that is not acceptable. It is a revolt against we the people and an act of violence against all the lawful precedents that found our constitution. Those precedents include UK membership of Europe's Free Trade Union. One thing we know for certain, far-right extremists do not at all like free trade unions. Now, I ask people, please, to read through this, because it contains very, very important information. Like I say, you won't get this off the BBC. You won't get it off the Labour Party MPs. As far as I'm concerned, you know, they have behaved abominably, that they've still, even themselves, focusing all this attention on virtually non-existent anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, but they're not warning the British people about the horror that is going to impact our country from the hands of these evil, criminal, Tory bastards is all we can call them. They are illegitimate. They're an illegitimate government. An illegitimate government acting directly on behest and on behalf of foreign powers, and British people will die as a result. 50 years austerity. We know 10 years austerity has already murdered 200,000 people. That's a fact, right? How many more are going to die with this hard Brexit? Why is it that this government has stated clearly, and I'll leave you the link, check the evidence, people. They've stated that they have no legal responsibility to provide food for people after a hard Brexit or any other catastrophe. But they have stocked up on body bags. Now that is serious. That is serious. And the Labour Party, all they can do is concentrate on getting what? Anti-Semitism, non-existent anti-Semitism out of the Labour Party. How about tackling Boris Johnson and his pledge, his alliance, his known alliance now with Britain First, okay, EDL, that we know. EDL now are directly behind Boris Johnson and his party. They've actually all joined the Tory party. It's absolutely outrageous.
I wish I'd checked.
Unfortunately, I can't show it, but you know, I showed you the thing there. The headline urges supporters to join the concert.
It's always better to check it before you jump.
So, but I'll leave you the link to that. Britain First. Known anti-Semitism, anti-Islamic, you know, hard right extremists. They've maimed, terrorised, traumatised, even killed British citizens, even a British MP. Their supporters are known. And the BBC's there, you know, promoting one of them very recently on their recent Question Time. Their hand-picked audience has a woman who stood as MP for the National Front. They're spouting on about immigrants. She gave the Hegelian dialectic to a T. Problem, reaction, solution. The problem of immigrants, the reaction. Struggling NHS, British people not getting enough healthcare. What's the solution? Oh, pay at point of service. Pay at point of service. Let's have a point system where you pay to use the NHS. Seriously, that from the BBC. We are under attack. And Labour, you have not stood up for us. And I am disgusted with you and I'm sick of you. I'm sick of an opposition that is there like a cardboard cutout. And what are you doing? What are you there for then? Management, aren't you? You're there to manage and placate the public. To, oh yeah, we're doing something. Don't worry. Don't you worry about it. We're dealing with it. No, you're not. You'll be there sat taking your bloody expenses, your second homes, getting you how many wage rises have you had in the last 10 years while British people have been chucked out of their homes, living in the fucking gutter, even veterans, sorry, you know, a 80-year-old veteran dying on the streets, a veteran of World War II dying on the streets of Britain, homeless, is outrageous, and you're all going to be lining up to buy your poppies. I am lost for words. Now, people in this country, either you are going to have to come out en masse and demand that this government is thoroughly investigated, arrested, investigated. The hard Brexit that they want to deliver is illegal. Okay, you want Brexit, people? We need a second referendum, because referendums need to be based on the truth and facts, not a pack of lies. You can't have a referendum on a pack of lies. How can people make a choice when they're given false information? You give people the full information, we make our choice. You want to leave the EU, you want to stay in the EU. Right. Either way, it's going to be with a deal. If we're going to leave the EU, you're still going to have your food and medicines, you're still going to have your human rights, you're still going to have your health and safety regulations, your environment is still going to be protected. But, alright, you're not part of the EU. The immigration stopped, your freedom of movement has stopped. You know, that's the kind of Brexit that people thought we were going to be getting. That's what the majority of people who voted for Brexit thought they were going to be getting. Not total scrapping of all our rights, scrapping of our democracy, us being taken over by far-right extremists, and our country suddenly ruled by martial law, because that's what they're bringing in. As soon as their hard Brexit comes in and people are queuing up for the very expensive rations that the majority won't even be able to afford, they will have this whole nation living out of bloody food banks. Seriously, people, we have got this 1 year now to rise up to either do a France or an Iceland, but either way, keep it peaceful. We don't want rioting, because we need to think about the children, the elderly people. We need to keep calm. We need lawful rebellion against a revolting government and a revolting crown that have revolted against our laws, revolted against our rights, revolted against our United Kingdom, okay, revolted against our democracy. And you at MI5, well, hats off to you. It seems that you're picking up now. You've arrested Britain's first senior official recently because of their involvements with the Russian government. Recently coming back from Britain, probably by now also a Tory member. But you need to also be arresting and investigating every single one of Boris Johnson's cabinet right now, David Cameron and Boris Johnson himself. Because this hard Brexit that they want to deliver for Britain is absolutely criminal and illegal. And as I've explained very clearly in here, if Central London banking system wants this, that square mile of central London wants to leave the EU, well, you leave the EU. We will build a hard border around your square mile of central London. Because I'll tell you one thing, it'll be a lot easier than building a border across Ireland, or building a border in the sea, or building a bridge between Scotland and Ireland. We will build a wall around central London, okay, that square mile financial city. We will build a border wall, hard border around you, because that is going to be your choice, okay? Because we are not going to accept scrapping of all our rights. You are not going to dump the people of Britain into World War, back to the conditions of pre-World War II. My grandfather and all the men with him and all the people and women of that generation who suffered and sacrificed so much did not go through that in order for their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren to be living under a fascist far-right dictatorship on behalf of the kind of people who think they have the right to murder and kill on the grounds of ethnicity and religion, okay? Nazi ideology is what we are looking at here, okay? They did not give their lives for that. They did not give their lives for Britain to become a corporate crown tax haven. They did not give their lives for our benefit system, welfare system to be replaced by a factory prison. Okay? For people to be working until the 70. No, you are not going to use this Brexit to scrap everything that we have paid in our heritage by our ancestors, written in blood. was those contracts. And you are not going to scrap them. Because before they get scrapped, we will scrap all the alleged legalities and paperwork and rights associated with this Her Majesty to sit on that throne of England. Why should she sit there on the basis and grounds of what? Ancient contracts, ancient laws, ancient rights. Well, if our rights can be scrapped that has been written in our blood and our suffering, so can hers. Okay? Because there will be a revolution in this country before we swallow this crap. Okay? You can talk about Muslims, whatever, till you're blue in the face. You are never ever going to scrap our human rights. Okay? Britain is not an anti-Semitic nation. The people of the Labour Party, anti-Semitism is actually the least problem in the Labour Party of all the political parties currently operating within Britain. And every single Labour MP that has signed up to those Zio-Bod directives, I'm sorry, you are, every one of you are traitors, because not one of you have turned around and asked Israel, well, why should we sign up to your demands when the nation that you are serving, the government that you are acting on behest of, has just made this statement. Not one Labour MP has questioned this statement. So how do we know now that it wasn't Mossad agents coming to Britain and rigged our election? How do we know that? How do we know that they won't be doing the same in America for the 2020 election in America? Rigging the election to give Trump a landslide win. How do we know they won't be doing that? Because apparently they can violate the law of any nation. This is a serious terrorist threat, and it's time that we woke the bloody fuck up and started asking questions about it. And people, take strength, take courage. Apathy kills. Remember that. Your apathy kills. We are all going to have to stand up for our rights. And if you don't, well, die moaning. Die moaning, because I'm sick to death of getting on Twitter, Facebook. Oh, look what Boris Johnson's done now. Oh, look what Priti Patel's done. Oh, look. I'm sick of looking. We know these people are criminals. Our children's lives are on the line here. You either get up, fight for your rights, or die moaning. That's the choice.